Mientras Annie Pollock se retira, les quiero presentar a Rana Cheerawo. Rana Cheerawo es la persona que nos va a dar la ponencia siguiente y es director adjunto de un centro que lleva el nombre de la pionera Helen Hamlin, que murió hace unos años, y que es un centro de altísimo nivel. Es un centro de diseño del Real Colegio de Artes de Londres. Tiene un prestigio internacional incontestable. Salimos de la demencia, de nuevo ahora al diseño para todos. El centro tiene las responsabilidades de marcar pautas, hace formación, hace investigación y mantiene todo lo que es el principio que esta mañana insistíamos en el principio del diseño para todos. El centro está ubicado en Londres, tiene proyectos de asesoramiento, tiene proyectos de compromiso con la industria, hacen formación a estudiantes y recién graduados. En el programa tienen ustedes que hace centenar ya de proyectos colaborativos con compañías productoras como Samsung, Toyota o BlackBerry y otras, y tiene sobre todo la responsabilidad y el compromiso de la investigación de diseño, el compromiso con la industria. Estamos volviendo ahora a un aspecto mucho más general. Salimos de la demencia y entroncaríamos un poco más con la primera exposición de esta mañana. Rana Cheerawo verán su gran capacidad de comunicación y de nuevo nos invadirá, saliéndonos ya, como insisto, de la demencia, entrando en aspectos muchísimo más amplios. Siempre se ha marcado lo mismo que lo acaban de hacer Annie, en dos grandes aspectos. Primero, la seguridad, principio fundamental, y después la atención a cada necesidad individual. De tal manera que no puede haber recetas, hay necesidades concretas y con su experiencia y la del centro del cual es director adjunto va a ser útil lo que nos pueda comentar.
Wow, what an introduction, if the translation is right. Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I'm going to structure the talk in a couple of different ways. I am going to come back to some work we did in dementia, but I'm going to talk a little bit about design, a little bit about inclusive design, and hopefully link the two. I think many of the things that Annie said we salute. And actually, when we started off looking at this work, we really looked at the Stirling Centre as a place of, that's a guiding light in the UK. So what is a designer doing standing here? And it was a question we asked ourselves 4 years ago, 5 years ago. What does design contribute? And I think it's something that's an ongoing conversation for us. We're based at the Royal College of Art, which is actually 80% about design. So it's called art, but we're actually about design. The Helen Hamlin Centre for Design has done many, many things over the years, from products to vehicles to architecture. We've worked with over 90 different business organisations conducting design research. We work in 3 research labs, Age and Ability, which I lead, and it's deliberately not called Older People and Disability, because we're all on a spectrum of age, we all are on a spectrum of ability. Some days we may wake up and we feel much older than our biological age. Some days we feel younger. Some days we feel more able. Some days we feel disabled. And if you have to carry a 25-kilogram suitcase across a subway system, you are effectively disabled. So we have a very wide term of what aging is and what disability is. We also work in health and patient safety and work in city. This is a big belief. And why say something when someone else said it much better? Bruce Nussbaum from Design Week said, "Design goes way beyond aesthetics. It can change business culture and all of our civil society as well." And the two important words there for me are business culture and civil society. Because I think design isn't just about window dressing. You know, I worked in a company, a car company once, where the designers were called flower arrangers. You know, we were seen as these people who just come in and make things pretty. But actually design is about this. For us, quite simply, it's about improving life. And what do I mean by that? Well, let me show you. So here's an issue, very much an inclusive design issue. And it's not because this lady's 80. We all have problems because of this. So I'm just going to pull that out. It's making a horrible noise. The problem with this is that you have 60 to 90 buttons to switch on a TV in the average house today. The TV, the satellite dish, the sound system. And I think, you know, whilst Francesca's slide, you know, showed the obvious need for simpler design, what do we do with existing houses? What do we do with existing remote controls? One of our students, a guy called Tom Stables, created this. And it's not a final design. It's more of a design prototype, a method of questioning. And it takes the 3 remotes and puts them together in one container. And it blanks out all the buttons that are not needed. So the first remote control, you only actually need 1 button. And the second, you only need 2. And this is what happened when we gave it back to the lady.
That's right. That's right. Day on Saturday. Well, Ben Brown is in Johannesburg.
Now we say that that smile is what we design for. Because I think when you do inclusive design, design for all, it can all feel very worthy. You know, is it about ramps? Is it about grab handles? Well, it's all about those things. But it is also about the human spirit. And we say to our designers, you are designing for delight, for aesthetics, for growth, for human beings. You are designing for that kind of reaction. You are designing for life. And the problem is that design does have an image problem. So I'm going to take this out again. If you put the word design in front of something like sunglasses or clothing, designer sunglasses, designer clothing, it means something with a very, very strong emphasis on aesthetics and a very high price. And it really isn't what design is about. Because design-led firms, these are companies who use design in the correct manner, outperform the stock market measures by up to 200%. So design-led firms in the red, stock market in the blue and the green. And this is hard science, it's numerical evidence that design really can make a difference. But who is design for? Quite simply, it's people. It's done for people, aimed at people, by people. Everything in this room has been designed. You couldn't have got up today, had breakfast, traveled here, heard this lecture without design. And everything somewhere has had a design decision made about it, even if it's a bad one. So we say that design is centered around people, or as we like to say, people-centered design. Now you'll hear this called many, many different things. Inclusive design in the UK, universal design in the US and Japan, design for all here in Spain, the Scandic region. You'll hear terms like co-design, participatory design, many, many others. But what ties them all together for me is the people-centered approach. The other term that we sometimes use is socially driven design. I wanted to share some of our methods, which are really based around the emerging discipline of design ethnography. So ethnography, traditional ethnography and social science, people would go to the Brazilian rainforest and spend 3 years with people, or 3 months, and study them. You know, anthropology, which from the Greek literally means the study of man. But design ethnography, sometimes you only have 3 minutes to get something meaningful. And I kid you not, we have done research with people only having 3 minutes. And this is people waiting for a bus, people on a tea break in the office, and it still can work. There's 1,000 methods out there, but it's very simply based into seeing, asking, and interpreting. Seeing how people live. What do we think this is? Room in a house? Living room? Daycare center? This is an office for a young mother who has just had her first baby and is going back to work. And I think there's so many design opportunities here. If you look at the sofa, you'll see that everything is just out of reach of a toddler, of a small child. They can't reach the computer. Ask people what they actually do. So on the top right, this is a project we did for BlackBerry. And on the top right is a mother and grandmother. And we wanted to talk about conversation. We didn't want to talk about technology. We wanted to talk about what technology does, which it enables human contact. And we looked at the multi-generational family. And it was interesting when you interview the mother and the grandmother separately and record their answers, and then you bring them together and ask them the same questions, and you see how the answers are different. And it's not because people lie. It's because people engage differently with other people. And people engage differently. When you ask them one question one day, they'll answer it differently in another. And these are the things that we design for. It's also about making interpretations. As human beings, we're all curious. If you look at these 4 living rooms, each of them is different. And if you were to look at the top left, you may start to make assumptions about who lives there. It's usually, teenage boys, basically, because it's a mess and it's got lots of electronic equipment around. The bottom right is actually Elvis Presley. And when I've asked audiences around the world which one is Elvis Presley's living room, everyone says that. Now, no one I've met has met Elvis, but as human beings, we make interpretations. And that's a muscle, as designers, that we want to strengthen. Use your curiosity, make interpretations. We evaluate ideas, sorts of things designers do, but go beyond that. Follow people around. And this is a project we did for Heathrow Airport, their new terminal. They gave us a couple of years to create a set of guidelines for their designers, for their architects. I think they're numbered 250. To allow them to create something that was better at wayfinding. So you're able to find your way more easily in the environment. Because at airports, especially older style airports, you arrive and you're met with McDonald's, coffee shops. You know, you're not there to shop, you're there to fly. The airport gave us a group of business customers, and we rejected this because we said business travelers have small suitcases. They have a secretary on the end of the phone who will help them if they go wrong. They know what they're doing. They're able-bodied, and why bother with them? What will they tell us that's interesting about getting lost and wayfinding? So instead we spoke to an 8-year-old girl and a couple in their 80s who had osteoporosis and couldn't lift their luggage, a visually impaired man in his 60s, and a Japanese tourist who didn't speak English. And I promise you, they told us 110 more interesting things than this group of business customers. And, you know, things like the visually impaired person kept on going to the toilet. And we filmed this, recorded this, and afterwards we asked him, why did you go to the toilet 7 times in 1 hour? You know, when you lose your eyes, do you need to go to the toilet more often? What goes on here? And he said that actually the toilet is the only place he can hear the announcements for the plane. And actually in one airport, he nearly got arrested for hanging around in the toilets for too long. It's also about setting people tasks. So this is a project we did with packaging and supermarkets. The marketing manager said, there's nothing wrong with our packaging, it's great, older people love it. So we took some bacon packaging, some cerdo, and asked Frank, aged 76, to open the packaging. He takes 12 minutes. This video is 12 minutes long, and he still doesn't open it. Don't worry, I'm not going to show you the whole 12 minutes. I know lunch is coming soon. We showed the whole 12 minutes to the marketing manager, and he said, yes, I now, take the video off, switch it off. I realize we have a problem. So sometimes real life can really show you what's going on, especially when you're making decisions in the boardroom. It's also about experiencing people's world. And whilst this doesn't replace contact with real people, this is one of our researchers who blindfolded himself to experience London from the point of view of a visually impaired person. Ask people to record what they do, but capture emotions as well. So the slide says, what made you laugh today? I'm happiest when. And this was a project with office workers. Why? Why do we do this? Because you spend 8, 10, 12 hours a day at the office. Why shouldn't you be happy? Why shouldn't design uplift you? Why shouldn't the design of your office be better? So for us, it's not just about testing solutions, but helping to define problems. A little bit about the context. I'm just going to talk just a little bit about some of the work with dementia that we've done. And I think, 2/3 of care home admissions happen in the UK because the person has some form of dementia. But only 60% of them are in dementia-registered beds. And as Annie's talked about, even those dementia-registered beds are the design, the facilities, could be improved. And part of the reason is it's quite difficult to diagnose someone with dementia, especially in the early and mid stages, where is someone just being forgetful? We're all forgetful. When we're stressed, we forget things. Or do they have dementia? And our approach really was to better understand dementia, running focus groups involving people with dementia, a literature review, establishing the design challenges, interviews with staffs and residences, and finally producing a set of design outcomes. We had 3 core values that we wanted to look at and maintain throughout our work. And that is to build on people's remaining abilities. So not just designing for disability, but designing for remaining cognitive ability. The second is also creating a social environment that allows the residents and staff to interact. And the final thing is the physical environment. And I think Annie's presentation talked a lot about that. So the projects were done with care home provider Bupa, who are a commercial healthcare provider. And this put us in a really interesting space between academic research and commercial realization. To start off with, we looked at dining areas and bedrooms. And the first 2 years resulted in a book, which is downloadable from our website. I'll give you that address later. The dining section of the book looked at how to capture culture, ritual, and personality to be able to improve current dining systems. There's a number of wide-ranging proposals for adapting existing interior layouts, so not just designing new buildings, but retrofitting. And a few of these ideas were things like observing some of the residents, the frailty, and the fact that they couldn't move without the help of a carer. But what if these surfaces were to self-support? So on the right, the green surfaces, what if they were able to allow you to navigate a dining room or a space by yourself? So the chairs, the tabletops, the little balustrade or grab rails. And I think looking at existing issues. So here we have we have a service area that's located right next door to the dining area, and this can become very, very busy and disorientating for people with dementia. Why does my dining room feel like an airport? So we looked at how you could take service areas outside of the dining areas, reducing noise, reducing stress for residents. We also looked at kitchens. On the left you can see the residents are sitting there, bored, looking at TV, and there's activity in the kitchen. But how can residents be involved in certain activities? And the care homes that we looked at, the majority of residents were women in their 70s, 80s, 90s, who were used to taking care of the family. And one heartbreaking moment we saw was when this woman in her 80s cleared the table for her fellow residents and was taking the plates to the kitchen and was told off, was shouted at by the staff member in case she fell over. And for us, we saw this person wanting to be independent, wanting to do what she'd done all of her life, and just being stopped like that. The care home on the right, the emphasis is more on involving the residents, and they're involved in peeling fruit, peeling potatoes, a baking day, and it's men and women, as you can see. The staff here was teasing this gentleman, calling him Jamie Oliver, who's a very famous English chef. We also looked at ways of integrating having an open plan kitchen, which sort of capitalizes on some of the redundant spaces and offers amenities to improve carer-resident interaction. We observed design problems like this. Here the table has a lip underneath it, and it means that the wheelchair can't get under the table. So you're asking this lady who's in her 90s to sit half a meter away from the table and eat and reach. And the staff were saying she's not very good at eating. She doesn't really enjoy her food. That wasn't the problem. The wheelchair was. So we came up with a design of table that has no lip, nothing underneath. It's a flat surface on top and on the bottom, and wheelchairs can slide underneath. So just looking at those kind of things coming together, someone makes a wheelchair, someone makes a table, but they don't talk to each other. We looked at eating. A big part of dignity, being able to feed yourself, being able to drink yourself, and how sometimes that ability can fade away. But how do you still maintain independence? Again, we were told another resident wasn't eating properly, and we realized it was because of white food on a white plate. So if you look at the plate on the left, you know, it's a bit yellow on the projector, but actually the top half couldn't be seen. So we looked at creating some slate grey, slate blue plates, which actually were very popular in the 40s and 50s, bringing back some domestic cues. For those who have a little bit more, a little less ability, we looked at high-lipped plates, so you could actually eat one-handed, especially good for people who have limited dexterity or maybe have had a stroke. We observe things like this on the left, where this lady is drinking from a baby cup. You know, this is a cup one gives one's children, basically. And a lot of the cutlery and the plates and the cups have the aesthetics of children. And which one of us, put your hands up, which one of us would want to drink from that in public? Absolutely no one. So we were looking at how you could create the same benefit of this cup in another one. So why they give the resident this cup is because it has two handles and you won't burn your hand on the tea. So just by building it into the manufacturing process, the cup on the right has a little vacuum, so it's cold to touch on the outside. We also looked at tableware that carers could use to bring the food into the sensory range of people. You know, how do you create appetite using smell, using sight? And this is perhaps how the plate may be used. And this is in the case of someone who needs feeding, you know, is at that end of the spectrum. Going into bedrooms, we looked at bedroom environments and what's going on in there. And the fact that people need to change the bedroom environment quite often, especially if residents move out or people pass on or they need to reconfigure the care home. Annie talked a lot about personalizing the space, so I won't go into that. But we looked for inspiration from the retail area, because one thing that shops are great at doing is you take an empty space and you can reconfigure it. And we wanted to look at a system of rails, of shelves, of furniture that could be reconfigured very easily for that person's taste or preference. So you could take an empty room and turn it into a uniquely personal environment without the expense of ongoing renovation. So how can you take that cost out of the care home system? And I think that was the interesting thing with working with a commercial organization, is you start to see why some of these bad design decisions are actually made. Annie talked a lot about personalizing the front door. And it's interesting because we do a lot of work with autism. And there's a similar problem there, that residents of a home sit in the communal space and keep on seeing postmen, delivery men, lots of service people, visitors, staff coming through the front door of the institution. And they keep on thinking, why are people coming into my home? Why are people invading my home? But by giving the front door aesthetic to the bedroom, there is a change. Even with people with autism, they understand that this is their personal space, and the institution is the institution. The wardrobe can become the center of a person's life, and a lot of wardrobes that we observed didn't just hold clothes, they held pictures, memorabilia, etc. There's oversized handles, again with a good color contrast to show exactly what this object does. There's many features that I think I need, such as cutaway drawers, so you can see what's inside the drawer without having to open it. And I really need that because I forget where I put things in my wardrobe all the time. There's hangers on the outside, so you can actually hang the whole outfit. And we did this double hanger, so you could put a shirt and a trouser or a skirt on the same hanger. So people with dementia could be involved in the decision-making of what they're going to wear today. And they're reminded, that they're in the process of dressing. Sometimes it can take, up to 20 minutes. There's a slightly recessed drawer, which for out-of-season clothes. And we also looked at bringing more illumination, more lighting into the wardrobe without using light bulbs. So just cutting slots in the top actually keeps the clothing aired and it allows light to come in. So many of these ideas we put together in an exhibition, and they're in this book. I just want to spend the final couple of minutes telling you about a website that resulted from the project called Better Care Homes. And Bupa very kindly allowed us to share all of the research, open access. This really looked at the fact that in the care home, people have many different disabilities, and sometimes they conflict with each other. What may be good for someone with visual impairment may be very bad for someone who can't walk long distances. So we talked to people with disabilities, went into their homes, tried to understand how each disability affected their life. We went into 14 care homes and talked to the managers and the providers. We did co-design workshops, and here you see disability experts around the table helping to co-design the space using paper models. And the final website looks a little bit like this. It's aimed at designers, providers, and draws from a lot of different sources, a lot of different expertise in the field. I think the Sterling Centre is quoted a lot. There's various sections. So under the ability section, you have a section on dementia, sensory loss, physical abilities. Under the design tab, you can see everything from the site layout of new homes into particular design opportunities. And here we look at a kind of dividing a care home into smaller clusters. So residents with the similar sort of abilities can each live in a cluster. So you're able to kind of divide up people with different abilities and have them, having some sort of comparable companions around them. This is a detail of one of those clusters, just showing the bedroom wing. And I think again, each of the designs, it looks very similar to your work, Annie, but it has a little pop-up kind of instruction or value or direction. So this is just talking about visible storage. This is looking at bathrooms. And this is looking at kitchens, again, bringing it into the heart of the home. So this is the website. I would encourage you to have a look. If there's any comments or criticisms, please do come back to us. The final thoughts to leave you with. I think it's very important in this kind of work, whether it's with dementia or in any type of design, to go beyond stereotypes, to see the person, not just the user. And I love these two images because one talks about older people and technology and their ambition to use technology, which technology companies still rarely believe. And the other presents a very alternative view of aging. It's by an artist called Katrine Troutner. And instead of, death, decrepitude, disability, it talks about the intensity of life. It's sensual, even sexual. It's an uplifting image. It's about realizing that people differ more than just physically. They differ mentally, culturally, socially, spiritually, and emotionally. And finally, as we say to our designers, you need to go out and listen to people, because people are experts in their own lives. You are not an expert in their life, you're an expert in other things. Or as one of our designers used to put it, he would give everyone this drawing when he walked into their home and say, "Hi, I'm Ross, I'm here to learn about your life." So seeing people as active contributors, participants, and curators and authors of their own lives, not just test subjects, research subjects, users, or we have this term in the UK, guinea pigs. This is the final slide, and I wanted to show you the team back home, because all of this work has not been done by me. There is a whole team of people that work on these sort of things. Our website is at the top, and our Twitter feeds are below. Thank you very much for your attention.
Me quedo con compro una frase que pienso utilizar, y es la necesidad de que el que construye y fabrica la silla de ruedas hable con el que fabrica la mesa en la que va a comer la persona en la silla de ruedas. Y que hablen el que hace la mesa del restaurante y la silla para que te permita cruzar las piernas, algo tan elemental cuando comes. Todavía no he visto ninguna película donde el actor que carga una maleta la llene llena, al menos con 10 kilos, 15 kilos. Todas están vacías y por eso suben al tren dando botes, dando saltos. Es irreal. Me ha gustado muchísimo su explicación.